Oh guys, the topic of this video, guys, is going to be about the fact that death is inevitable, guys. Death is inevitable. I do think that I talk quite a lot about like death on my channel, death and fucking how all these other existential problems, etc. But death is certainly one of like man's biggest like fucking fears, is the fear of like dying. Death has been plaguing our species like since forever. Like, I wonder, that's actually so interesting in terms of like human development, in terms of our evolution, if you believe in that type of stuff. When did our ancestors become like conscious and aware of like the whole like thing about like dying and death and not living? Like when I wonder when that happened. Like when our ancestors figured out that, oh, okay, at some point we all just turn into mush and we're not alive anymore. I wonder when our ancestors figured that out, pieced that together. Our more primitive ancestors, I wonder when they like put two and two together and figured out that at some point we're not going to be alive, and this type of like feelings and emotions, all that type of stuff, this experiences and stuff, all that is going to go down the toilet, and we're just going to fucking be literally like, it's just going to be blackness and stuff, and our bodies are just going to be munched on by worms, and we're returned to skeletons. I wonder when our more primitive ancestors managed to like start to figure this out. Because it's actually so weird. Imagine if you weren't raised in like a modern society. Imagine if you were born 1,000 kajillion years ago. How would you have figured out death as a concept? It must have been so interesting. Because like before our primitive ancestors learned about the whole concept of like death and dying and that we're not here forever, they probably thought that like we actually live forever. It's just that, and you know, like there's no such thing as death. It must have felt like they were immortal in that sense, that they didn't have any type of concept of death or dying. Our more primitive ancestors, because they were so dumb, they couldn't figure it out. So it must have been like, for them, it must have felt like they were immortal and they couldn't die. And maybe perhaps like one of their parents, they probably were like completely like passed out on the floor. They just thought that they're just going to get back up any day now, even if there's still on the ground for a couple of years, they're gonna come back any day now. That must have been like fucking funny as hell, because a couple 100,000 years ago, like our more primitive ancestors, maybe like one of their parents were probably fucking dead on the ground. Any day now, he or she's gonna get up. Mom and dad is gonna get up. My cave mom or dad is gonna get up and it's gonna comfort me. Any day now. It must have been fucking quite hilarious to think about that, indeed. But death is inevitable, guys. As a human being, what sets us apart from all the other animals on this planet has to be the fact that we're so like consciously aware of death and dying and death. That is so, it's so intimately linked to a lot of the different world cultures and societies. A lot of like the world's, if you look around our entire planet, all human civilizations have kind of been like geared towards death and dying, trying to like rationalize it, to understand the whole process and concept of like death and dying, to offer some type of explanation for it. You know, like in India, you got like the whole theory of reincarnation and rebirth, and we did die and deteriorate and we come back to life, and etc. Obviously in the Middle East, you got Islam, Judaism, Christianity, that we die and then some type of creator God's going to like judge us and send us to some other type of place, heaven or hell. And then the other rest of the world was like consumed with like some different types of pagan beliefs, like that there might be some type of other place that we jump to, or we come back, we just turn into ghosts or something similar. Like death is inevitable, guys. It's so, again, interesting to me. I really am kind of like very curious about this. When did our more primitive ancestors start to become aware of the entire like thing about death and dying, that we're not going to be alive forever, and that at some point we're just going to fucking become brain dead and we're going to be turning into mush and worms are going to be munching on us and we're going to be turning into skeletons? I wonder really at what point in our history did our more primitive ancestors become aware of this whole like thing about death and dying. It's so fascinating, guys. Death is inevitable. As a human being, that's what you got to really fucking understand, that life is fucking finite. We as human beings, we're only here for like a couple of decades max. Most people live till they're like fucking 60 to some extent. I know people like the average human lifespan can reach to like 100. Typically, a lot of us, we don't live to a fucking 100. A lot of us, we live till we're fucking 40, 50, 60. And then maybe if you're lucky, 70, 80, 90, 100. That's like, even if you're like, who the fuck wants to live, like, who the fuck wants to be an old geezer anyway? I'll put a bullet in my head if I was a fucking old shit. What the fuck what value is there in living to like in being an old man? I'm actually so curious about the fact that like I see all these old people walking down the street. I'm actually a little bit curious. Why haven't they put a bullet in their heads? Like, what value is there in being like an old shit? Your bones don't work, your dick doesn't work. What's the point then? It's fucking anyway. But death is inevitable, guys. You can like fucking think about this, guys. You can be staying in a room, not doing anything. For how long? You can do it. Imagine that. That's such an interesting, like, philosophical concept. in such a good, interesting, intellectual, philosophical exercise. Think about this. You're in a room completely isolated. You can do nothing your entire life. You're still gonna fucking die. That's the only thing that's guaranteed at the end. You're gonna fucking face death. Death is gonna fucking rape you at the end. You can be fucking doing nothing. You could be fucking sitting inside of your house all day for like fucking decades. You can be stuck in your house for fucking countless years and millennia, and you're gonna turn into a skeleton. That's the thing that's so funny. Doesn't matter who you are. You're gonna turn into a fucking skeleton. You're gonna turn into a fucking skeleton. You're gonna get munched on by worms. Doesn't matter whoever you are. You're gonna turn into a fucking skeleton in just a couple of decades. You're gonna turn into a skeleton. Whoever is watching my videos, you're gonna turn into a fucking skeleton. You're gonna get munched on by worms. You're gonna be fucking in the ground, decomposing and getting eaten alive by worms and parasites. And you're gonna turn into a fucking skeleton, guys. Death is inevitable. And you can't do anything about it. All these like fucking retards, stem cell therapy, extending my lifespan, just fucking doesn't matter what the fuck. Even if you extend your lifespan, like let's just say you stem cell therapy, like there's some type of like medicine that can expand our life to like 1,000. It doesn't matter how long you live, you're gonna die anyway. Maybe perhaps, okay, fair enough. Maybe they might figure out a way to like regenerate our muscle tissues and organs. But what about your brain? Can they regenerate everything perfectly? At some point, your brain's just going to turn to mush. How are they going to fix that up? If they grow your brain again, that's not even going to be you then. That might be someone else. That's so interesting. Like each part of your brain, they keep swapping it out for new parts. Is that still going to be you? I don't think so. I think that's going to be, you're going to be like literally a new person is going to be coming alive. But death is inevitable. It doesn't matter if you take stem cell therapy, whatever the fuck that whatever coping mechanism that you have for death, death is gonna fucking rape you, man, in the ass. It doesn't matter what the fuck you do, guys. You're gonna get raped by death. If you can picture death as like a very masculine, strong man, he's gonna bum you in the ass, guys. It doesn't matter who you are. He's gonna bum you, man. You're gonna get bummed by death, man. It's gonna fuck you up so hard. So you gotta think about that very deeply. Death is such a fucking terrifying concept as a human being. Are we the only animal species that is like aware of like death and dying? What other type of creature on this planet has that type of like sentience level that they know that at some point they're gonna stop being alive and they're no longer gonna be able to be conscious and functioning? Death is so fucking insane, but to some extent, you shouldn't really worry too much about it because we already, if you really think about this, we were already dead to begin with. Then we came alive. Think about that. Before you were born, what were you? You weren't alive at all. You were like before you were born, before you came out of your mother's womb. Think about this. You were sort of, or more or less, already dead. So we already experienced death. We just came back to life to some extent. If you think about it, like that's kind of very interesting. Before you were born, you're pretty much already dead. So, and then you came alive, but then you're going to die again. Obviously, when death is discussed, when we're talking about death, you got to like look into highly encourage you guys to study the Quran. Here's the Quran, and there's like other types of religious scriptures as well. The Bible, I mean, the Bible is not as good as the Quran in my opinion, but you can look into that yourself. Study all the religious scriptures, carefully think about it, but death is inevitable. But what really calms me and like stops my fears about death and dying is that we already were dead to begin with, then we came alive, and then now we're going to die again. Perhaps if you're a Muslim, you got to believe that we're going to be put into paradise after we die, and we're going to be in paradise. We were dead, and then we were born, and now we're going to die again. Then I feel like, or reincarnation might happen. You might just wake up as a different person. You really shouldn't fear death. Death is inevitable, but it's not something you to be worried about. You just need to have it in your head, consciously think about this, and use it in a very productive way that, okay, at some point, I'm going to fucking die. I'm not going to be alive anymore. So I'm going to live life to the fullest. A lot of us, we're so like cowardly, shy. We live life in such a fucking mediocre, horrendous way because we're fucking terrified about dying. But death is fucking inevitable, guys. Even if you fucking sit in your room not doing anything for a fucking cajillion years, you're going to fucking die. You're going to turn into a skeleton. Worms are going to be munching on your body. Death is so fascinating as a concept. Again, I wonder when our more primitive ancestors became aware of the whole thing about like death and dying, that at some point we're not going to be alive and then we're going to be in the grave getting munched on by worms. But it's not something to be worried about anyway, because guys, you got to remember, before you were born, you were already dead to begin with. We already experienced death already. I actually do think so. Before like, think about before you were born. You can't really even, it's unimaginable, because before you were born you didn't even have like a brain to process the world around you and all sorts of information. But anyway, but going off on a side tangent, but death is inevitable, guys. Have it in your head. Think about this so deeply and carefully that regardless of anything that you do, you're going to fucking die at some point. So really, but this isn't something to be worried about. Really, you should use this in a more productive way, a proactive way that is inevitable. So you might as well live life to the fullest. And I think that's about it, guys.